Interesting keynote address from Jan, touching on various aspects and topics, social, economical, environmental, all leading towards sustainability and how it is so important that we have sustainable development. So friends, we heard the presentation from our esteemed panelists. They are again, we have got together again, and I have on my left Naveen from Quick Ride, Prashant from Continental, Dheeraj from Chazar, and then we have Shrikant from Janagraha and Tarun from EcoSTP. We'll just take some quick question. We have one question for each from the audience as per the audience response. Let me start with you, Prashant. Prashant, when we are talking about e-vehicles, now there is still India is dependent on imports, especially in the field of e-mobility. Now with the efforts of government to restructure the imports, curtail certain imports, and we are also talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, how to make India self-reliant, self-resilient. So how does this fit into the e-vehicle ecosystem then?
Thanks. Thank you, Rajesh. Certainly, unfortunately, India can't afford subsidies at this point of time to push the EV. Yeah. Right. Despite that, government is doing many things in terms of bringing in incentives, whatever as a government they could, in terms of FAME 1, FAME 2, and also reduction in the taxes. Yeah. I see when it comes to the adoption of electric vehicles, that's more going to be on the two-wheeler, three-wheeler, and the public transport side. And passenger cars certainly is going to take a little more time. Okay. The reason why I said the cost of reputance, in India, more than 60% of the cars what we produce are 4 million are all hatchbacks. They retail around 4 lakhs, 5 lakh rupees. At this point of time, given the cost structures what we have for EV, if you try to electrify this, there's going to be much more costlier than what it is today. And so you may not find enough consumers. Yeah. Having said this, but certainly two-wheeler side morely driven by last mile transport, especially on the e-commerce side, and also the last mile transport on the three-wheeler side and the public transport. We see a great offtake in terms of the growth what we see. At the same time, government is also doing many things in terms of bringing the cost down. And today, unfortunately, we have to depend on a lot of imports when it comes to on the battery side. While there is a lot of push in terms of local manufacturing, but still we have dependent on the raw materials. But even if you look at the rate at which the raw material costs have been coming down, we see already in terms of batteries. Yeah. So while it's about $180, $200, we see a good possibility in a couple of years to come down to less than 100 or maybe at $100 per kilowatt hour. So that certainly is going to further drive the adoption of EV.
Thank you. Thank you, Prashant. Coming to you, Dheeraj. Now, we've been talking about e-mobility in India for quite some time, but even if we look still at our two-wheeler sales, I think three-wheeler sales, we have about roughly around 7 lakh three-wheelers sale e-vehicles. When we talk about two-wheelers, I think it's about 1,50,000 to that tune. So it's, and the passenger car, as Prashant said, they are much lagging behind. I think it's hardly about 3,500 passenger cars what we sell. In your opinion, Dheeraj, what can really drive this push towards e-mobility? Is it more we require government support or the industry needs to pick up? Where is this gap which we are not able to fulfill? Of course, you are fulfilling one very important part of this whole ecosystem with the charging station. But the charging station can only be utilized when we have enough e-vehicles on the road. So what could be done, Dheeraj?
Thanks, Rajesh, for letting me know that our initiative is also helping in EV adoption. I feel that for EV adoption to attain scale, two main things are important. One is public awareness. So no amount of incentives government. There are a lot of incentives already there, but a lot of people are not aware of EVs in general. They have not seen enough vehicles on the road. if I want to buy an electric vehicle, I need to see electric vehicles on road, right? So the early adopters, increasing the early adopters, it is going to be the game changer. Right. If I see 1 lakh vehicles in Bangalore riding everywhere, that 1 lakh to becoming 1 crore is going to take no time. But now the sales are just struck at 1 lakh throughout the country, right? So a lot of tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, they haven't seen one electric vehicle yet, let alone they go and research on the incentives which are being given by governments. That is one major concern. And one more concern is that the range anxiety, which we are addressing. So yeah, let's solve one step at a time. So for bringing awareness, I think it's not just a single entity which can do that. It has to be multiple entities coming together to bring a solid awareness in people when it comes to EVs.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Naveen, coming to you. We are talking about rapid urbanization. In fact, we are saying that about till 2050, almost 65% of the populations will be in living in urban space. So mobility as a service, and you are in that field. How do you see that going ahead?
So it's like definitely that expansion of cities needs a different mode, like we already discussed. The thing is, we have to see this mode also very seriously.
Right.
Like when it comes to shared mobility, it should not limit to the, in conferences and all. It should go to the actual scenario. Like they have to promote, like from the government side, from the organization side, they have to promote it holistically. It should not be one way. Definitely we are doing that, like we said about the awareness.
Right.
Awareness we are promoting, but it's not the one, it's not from the one part. It has to be promoted through everyone, like this is a solution for commute. Nobody thinks right now if they want to commute, pooling can be a solution, or they don't trust it.
Right.
So that's the trust actually we want to build, and it will come with the communication, definitely awareness, and with the solution. That solution we are working on with lot of intelligence, lot of features, and the personalized way. So it will be very easy for them. So it will be a big user experience. So they'll also feel delight by using this one.
Right. What about the? I just wanted, because of the COVID, now shared mobility has become a little bit of a question mark.
Yeah. So right now it's like that, but this is the good time to we can say experiment.
Right.
There are a lot of things we can experiment, like the relay one, like from the one point to another, there will be 2-3 carpool you can change, but that too very seamlessly.
Right.
So those kind of things can come. If right now we start with the discussion about the benefits of it from the state government, if they can provide some incentives, it not be a cash, but it can be a service. Like in the bus we have started the lane. Why can't we include the carpool in that? So these kind of things we start discussions. So definitely post COVID it will be big help for us.
Right.
So for the commute, we are doing, like right now we are not doing that, but for the intercity we have picked up.
Right. Thank you. Prashant,
if I may add, Rajesh, I think in addition to what just Naveen said, I think the advanced countries are burdened with single ownership of cars.
Right.
Where in India the penetration is 28-30 per thousand. I think it's a huge opportunity. We should not be driving the ownership. Rather, we should be doing a lot of innovation, what this guy just discussed about in terms of driving the shared mobility. Right. I think there India presents a big opportunity for shared mobility. Absolutely. While certainly I think COVID has hit and many people are moving towards the individual mobility. That's because of sanitization, this thing. But still the recent McKinsey report talks about the adoption of shared mobility is going to be much more than what we have seen in the past in the coming years.
Right, right. No, I think as you rightly said, Prashant, I think both Dheeraj and Naveen, amazing work they're doing, and I think it's really, the society will really benefit from the good work you all are doing. Right. Shrikant, let me come to you. We heard also in the keynote address about using how walkable cities, the concept of walkable cities. You also mentioned in your presentation about TenderSure and how TenderSure can really help in better urban planning and development. How far do you see a possibility of development of Bangalore as a city which would be a pleasure to walk in?
It actually depends on all of us. Right? So I think the biggest changes in India will have to come in the public realm. And the question that you asked with respect to Bangalore is also the public realm. And unless we are able to generate critical public demand at a neighborhood level for these changes, we are not going to see that happen. Because politicians get signals from the public. And we are reaching a point where electoral contests in cities are becoming far more hotly contested and slightly more development oriented than, say, a decade or two ago, when it was a lot more oriented towards patronage politics. Aspirations are rising, and that's clearly reflecting in far tighter contests in cities. So there has to be far greater, on the one hand, there has to be far greater mobilization of neighborhood communities around sustainable urban mobility, which is beginning to happen in Bangalore. A lot of initiatives around cycling, around walkability at a neighborhood level and so on, greening of neighborhoods, etc. But we need that at a far greater scale. We can't be happy with where we are. So mobilizing neighborhood communities to engage in their neighborhoods is extremely important. On the other hand, I think Bangalore is on the cusp of a fantastic opportunity to forge a partnership between politicians, business, and civil society. I believe in India, state capacities are far lesser than the West. The West had a clean 150 years where they were largely flush with capital through whatever means in the past during the Industrial Revolution. And they hadn't hit the cusp of urbanization that we've hit right now. Right? But we are grappling with these challenges when the state does not have capacities, whether financial or human. And they cannot solve these 21st century challenges, including that of climate change and sustainable mobility in cities, without support from civil society and business. Unless we forge this kind of and even the West is waking up to this. Governments in the West are beginning to realize they cannot solve 21st century challenges through a state-led approach alone. And this partnership in Bangalore has happened in fits and starts, but it has to be more firmly institutionalized.
Right. Maybe just to add to or just an additional question to that, Shrikant, who is actually going to finance or fund these initiatives? Because the government has only limited resources.
So, which is why I spoke about the partnership between business, civil society, and government. A lot of the funding will have to come from government. Right? There is no gainsaying that. I don't think governments can run away from the fact that they need to finance much of this. So one huge part of sustainable urban mobility is making public transit a lot more affordable, lot more widespread. That can't happen without government support. So there's no running away from it. Therefore, governments need to figure out ways to monetize the urban economy for their own benefit. Right? And Bangalore is a terrible case study in that. But I also want to say that we need new institutional mechanisms. We need to figure out a way to make public-private partnerships work in India's cities. Yes. The case of PPPs in India's cities is actually a fairly sorry story. It's not worked very well in the urban sector, but it is possible. For example, we were toying with the idea of making TenderSure, something like SmartSure, where the private sector can build TenderSure roads and take up the huge capital costs and provide utilities for power supply agencies and water supply agencies, etc., which are broke at this point in time. Right. And they, in turn, therefore save on capital costs. They get to make sure that the networks are underground and not overhead. Right? And therefore, it's more progressive, can be built for scale, and they only have to pay utility fees. So there can be an annuity model, which would be a global innovation. Right. That brings me to my last point. Unfortunately, in India, innovation in the private sector has far, far outpaced innovation in the public sector. Whereas most of our challenges are in the public realm. But our brightest minds are innovating in the private sector. They are operating in the fringes. Right? We need a lot more business and trade engagement with government. So the brightest minds in business and trade are able to apply their minds in the public realm. Right. And when I say apply themselves, it's not just hard technology. It's also, solutioning. Right. If you need to make PPPs work in India, how do you design incentives? Right. That requires conversations to happen. That requires trust to be built. Right. You need trust because business today is very scared to touch anything that is municipal and urban. Right? And governments always suspect that businesses are only out to rip off, right? And make undue profit. So there is a huge trust deficit, and that trust deficit has to be bridged. So you need, I can give you the example of the New York City Economic Development Corporation, which is a professionally managed body, but incubated by the New York City government. And they work at the intersection of creating great public spaces and making things work for business.
Right.
So we need new institutional forms which work at the intersection of business and government.
Right. And as you correctly said, I think perhaps a little bit of out-of-box thinking with some innovative ideas, but a very, very interesting point. Thank you for that, Shrikant. Coming to the last question to you, Tarun. We are talking about the clarion call of our Prime Minister, Make in India. So when we are talking about Make in India, we are wanting to increase the share of manufacturing. And wherever manufacturing is there, there is of course going to be certain bit of pollutants that are coming out. So under this realm, Tarun, what can be the way forward for India? Because we need to minimize our pollution levels also, whereas as a developing country, we are in a catch-22 situation. We need to progress, we need to industrialize also. So do we have any solution?
Yeah, that's a good question, Rajesh. A very difficult one. You know how bottom is China when they progress, what happens. But what is good news is now a lot of technology is available you can run a clean factory today. Right. What is lacking is two things. One is regulation is not enforced. Number two, measurement systems. You're not measuring the pollution. So like in our case, in our website, we show how much power we saved. Last we saved 140 megawatts of power. It's a real-time ticker. So imagine a factory giving a ticker, this much pollution is saved online. It's possible. Tech is available today. That's a kind of push. And the regulatory had to make sure that tech is available. It's only a question of regulatory mechanism and how is done on the ground. Right. Even if you look at from the STP point of view, only in Bangalore it is enforced. Nowhere else is enforced. Unless you enforce it, it won't happen. Like if you look at my customers, all of them are real estate builders. Why them? Why not hospitals? Why not temples? Why not all the schools, colleges? They all talk to us, but they won't give the order because there's no regulatory push. There's no, only builders need STPs because that's how we are. Right. It's easy for me to dump it to the drain right in front of me. It's so cheap or economical than putting anything else. And that mindset, like Dheeraj and all said, we have to change.
Right. Right. So I think if I may conclude, Tarun, I think technology is one part of it, and technology together with regulatory enforcement can really help to solve that solution. Thank you. Friends, with that, we would like to conclude the panel discussion now. Just the last sentence from my side. Urbanization in India is taking place at a faster pace than before. It is estimated that every minute some 30 people are migrating to Indian cities from rural areas. If the trend continues, the country's urban population is likely to reach about 600 million by 2030. Cities are growth hubs for India, and the country's transformation depends directly on their governance and sustainable environment. Now, this would be interesting. According to Niti Aayog, India requires 40 trillion rupees investment until 2030 to overhaul its infrastructure, whereas the revenue of all the municipal corporations put together is actually not more than 1.2 trillion. So it's a big question what we have. How is the rest funding going to come to? Friends, with that, I would like to conclude with the quote from our father of nation. He said, "There is enough on earth for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed." So thank you all the panelists for sharing your thoughts and views. And I think we had a very interesting presentation and deliberation on sustainable environmental development. And I wish this conference, the summit, GS Confluence, a lot of success. And thank you to all our viewers. And thank you, Jose, for putting this together in such an efficient manner. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you.
Thank you.